Russia is coming back to volleyball. I mean, more specifically, Russia is just coming back to sport in general, but by extension, Russia is coming back to volleyball. Now, it was announced yesterday morning the IOC provisionally lifts suspension of Russia Olympic Committee recommendations to international federations with regard to Russian athletes' participation no longer applicable. So basically, Russia is now allowed to play all international sports, given that they don't continue trying to take more territory in Ukraine, is essentially what it comes down to. Now, this morning, the FIVB also released their own statement about Russia, and essentially, in line with the IOC's executive board's administration, they will be reinstating Russia back into the fold of volleyball. And says the Russian national team shall also be restored to the world rankings with the same world ranking points they had at the time of their points were frozen by the decision of the FIVB Board of Administration. In addition, the display of the Russian flag, anthem colors, and any other identifications will be at the discretion of the FIVB and the European Volleyball Confederation, and decided in due time in consultation with the relevant international sport organizations to guarantee the full participation of the athletes. So there you have it. Russia is back in volleyball. And I mean, it was bound to happen. It was bound to happen, right? And I'm also going to be talking about my own opinions on this. I know there's a lot of opinions going around. I asked the Discord earlier today what they thought about it. It created a very spirited discussion. And as I expected, the Discord is a very multicultural place. We've got people from all around the world, and a lot of different people from different places are going to have different opinions on this. If you're from Ukraine, if you're from Poland, if you're from these places that are really close to the conflict, you're going to have different opinions on this. And that's all right. Okay? If you're a member of the Discord, I do want to thank everyone because while the discussions were kind of heated, they were also civil at the same time. Right? They were fairly civil, so I appreciate you all for that. My stance on this has always been, if you are going to ban Russia for invading Ukraine, you should also be banning Israel for committing genocides in Gaza and going after Lebanon as well. And then you should also be banning the United States for starting wars in Venezuela and Iran. Pretty simple, right? You start war. War is bad. War is bad for the people. You shouldn't be allowed to play international sport. That is what we had determined when Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2020. Was it 2021? No, it must have been 2022. That's what we determined back when Russia invaded Ukraine back in 2022. But as we've seen that neither the US nor Israel has been banned from any international sport, it only makes sense that Russia should be allowed to compete as well. Now, as I mentioned, the FIVB has already reinstated Russia back into the world ranking systems. They're third on the men's side. And they are, where are they at here? They're ninth on the women's side. So that is just something to note. And from a purely volleyball side of things, I honestly think this is for the best. Russia is one of the best teams in the world. They are one of the best volleyball countries in the world. There's a lot of countries around the globe who have their volleyball identity due to communism and Russia being involved with their countries back when the Cold War was happening in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. Russia, has won the Olympic Games. They've won world championships. They've won European championships. Their club teams are always, at the some of the best teams in the Champions League and other European championships. From a purely volleyball point of view, I think this is for the best. Russia should be competing with the best. And as some people in the Discord have pointed out in the past, any competition won without Russia there does create a bit of an asterisk. It has to, right? Russia is always going to be one of those favorite teams. They're always going to be in Italy or a USA or a Brazil. They're always going to be one of those teams that is going to be there and to compete. Now, if you ask me, it remains to be seen what's going to be happening in the CEV. They definitely will not be competing at this year's European Championships because, the draws are already set, the schedule's already set. That's already set up, so they will not be there. But it looks like, according to the FIVB, I guess it doesn't say it here, but I guess it looks like, according to the FIVB, there will be there will be a pathway in place for them to rejoin volleyball in 2027. Now, if they are, and we are seeing that they are back in the world rankings, that means that for the 2027 VNL, they will be getting promoted back into the VNL and replacing whatever team is relegated. And now, in that sense, I do feel really badly for Finland on the men's side. They are currently ranked 18th in the world, and as of right now, they were slated to be the team to be promoted. And then I believe it's Argentina on the women's side. Yeah, Argentina on the women's side, who are also 18th in the world, might move up and down depending on how Ukraine does and maybe Thailand does throughout the rest of this VNL. But still, those are two teams who are definitely getting the short end of the stick. However, if you're a volleyball fan, you can't sit here and tell me, and once again, this is just purely volleyball. This isn't politics. I know some people are going to be upset by this, but this is just my opinion on it. But if you're a pure volleyball fan, you can't tell me you'd rather see Finland and Argentina join the VNL and the World Championships than Russia. Russia's one of the best teams in the world, and especially on the women's side. I'm really excited to see what they look like back into the international fold on the women's side. I'm going to have to do another video altogether on, what these rosters are going to look like. But you can't sit here and tell me that it's not a good thing for the sport that Russia is returning to play volleyball. As I said, Russia is one of the best volleyball nations in the world, and fans have been deprived of seeing one of the best volleyball nations competing at the top. Right now on the women's side, you're going to have a legit top 10, right? When I look at these women's rankings now, with Italy and Brazil and Turkey and the USA and Poland, Japan and China and the Netherlands and Russia and Germany and Canada and Serbia, Dominican Republic, like that, those like the top 15 teams in the world, even, down to 16, are going to be legit. All right. Now, usually in these situations, I would ask your opinions. I know you're going to give them to me anyways, and I do want to know, but let's try to keep it civil in the comment section, please. I know that if you're Polish or Ukrainian, you probably feel a certain way about this. And I understand. I think your feelings are valid. But at the same time, and I'm not the type of person who's going to tell you, politics needs to stay out of sport. That's not the case at all. I believe that politics and sport are intrinsically linked, right? Anytime you're representing your country, you also represent the politics that support your country. That's why the U.S. gets booed a lot of places, right? That's why people are so happy right now after Belgium crushed the U.S. at the World Cup, because of what the U.S. represents. And Americans, I'm sorry to call you out, but it's just the lowest hanging fruit. Now, the one of the last things I want to say about this is I know that there is some precedent set with Ukrainian athletes refusing to play against Russia. And I really hope that's not going to be the case in volleyball. I really hope that both teams can come together and, represent their countries well. Especially on the men's side, that Ukrainian team is very, very good. I'd love to see what they can do up against the Russians. And I think it would be interesting, just from a pure entertainment sports side of things. Because as much as sport and politics are intrinsically linked, you also can't fault the athletes for what the government has done. And at the end of the day, I do think, and we've already seen, we had seen it was coming to this. Belarus was going to be allowed to play. The junior teams were going to be allowed to play. It was coming to this point. And now, officially, Russia will be coming back. And it's great for volleyball. Let's just put it that way. It is great for volleyball, and it's going to make the World Championships and the Olympics even better, because one of the best volleyball countries in the world is now back in the fold.